Welcome to the first ever Minute Masters video here in my homebrew studio, which I really hope you guys like. Feel free to leave me comments below because it's in the works and I'll take some suggestions on how to make it better. Today's main topic is the controversial fuel pump access hatch, which seems to have divided the OBS community in two, and I'm pretty sure I know the cause of that divide. I think it has to revolve around that imaginary line across the US known colloquially as the Rust Belt. Well, let's dive into it. So for those who don't know, I cut a hole in the bed of my truck so that I could open it and change the fuel pump at will without having to go through the longer, more laborious process of draining the fuel tank, dropping the fuel tank, or unbolting the bed and either sliding it back or removing it entirely. So I think a little backstory will help elaborate why I went this direction. And that would probably address some of the naysayers on like, how often are you repairing your fuel pump? You're probably buying crap parts. So I bought the truck, new to me in that first year of ownership, and bang, the fuel gauge hits E. But through a process of elimination, I have realized the pump is still working. So I was picking my motorhead dad's brain, and he goes, well, sometimes the fuel float actually fills up with fuel and sinks to the bottom, and so your fuel pump will still read, but will read empty, but it will still, pump fuel. Sure enough, that was the case. And I went through the normal process of driving the truck around until the fuel was completely empty and then dropping the tank. Of course, I had the luxury of driving around to empty the gas, made the repair, put everything back together, checked that merit badge, and off I was back to daily driving the truck. Fast forward, and the same thing happens again on that front fuel tank. Boom, hits E. Again, using the same process of elimination, I have discovered the fuel pump is in fact not working this time. So that's a little disheartening. I went through all that work, and now here I am, not near my house, not near my tools, not near my kind of safe zone of like, if something happens, I can fix it if I just go find that thing in the garage, right? And so that's when I was like, okay. So using the maintenance facility at the college I was at the time, I went ahead and I cut the hole in the bed using an angle grinder, and that's when the hatch was born. Now, just to address some of the safety concerns we have, yes, it's probably not the smartest thing to use a tool that generates sparks near a fuel tank. But I don't know about you guys, there's very few ways for a homebrew mechanic to cut steel and not create some level of sparks or heat. So I took some precautions. I had a fire extinguisher nearby. I took a 1/2-inch drywall piece of it, about 2x2, and I actually got in the bed and I slid it up between the gas tank and the bed. My rationale was A, the sparks will hit that. B, as I'm doing my depth cut with my angle grinder, if I go too deep, it A, gives something that will like start to cut into, but as soon as you cut drywall, it creates a puff of white smoke, right? So that would be my indication that I've gone too far. I probably could have used plywood. It all worked the same. So that's kind of how I covered myself on a safety aspect. And if I remember correctly, I even probably like put some tarping and stuff up there, like painter's tarp, so that again, if sparks hit it, it will just touch that and go out. So hatch is made, off on my way. Again, fast forward, that fuel tank develops a leak on the front. It's time to change that tank. So I, once again, drain the tank, open the fuel pump access hatch, disconnect everything, which is a much more leisurely process than trying to get up under the bed and disconnect everything, or at least partially lower the tank and then try to make your disconnection. I was able to do it up in the bed. And that's when I installed the plastic tank. Now, for those of us who daily drive these trucks, you do realize that when you take something apart, you got to get it back together as soon as possible because your life depends on this thing running. Like, if you start this a Saturday and you don't get it done, you got to get it done Sunday because you got to go work Monday. So that's how I always approached my repairs. And sure enough, I was faced with one of those decisions to get the truck on the road rather than let it sit. And that was the grommet that holds the fuel tank vent valve. When I was transferring it from the steel tank to the plastic tank, I discovered it wasn't in great condition. But that grommet is like really hard to find in store. So I transferred this bad grommet to the new tank, and once everything was put together and was driving around, sure enough, it was leaking. Now, if I'd gone about this conventionally, I would again have to drop the tank or remove the bed to make the repair. Otherwise, boom, hatch opens, made the repair, and I was off on my merry way. If you need that gasket, I believe, or that grommet, Jeff's Bronco Graveyard has it. Otherwise, that video, which I'll link here, I think I have it in the description and talk a little bit more about it. So already we're fuel float, fuel pump, fuel tank, grommet. So there's 4 repairs that have helped me immensely having that hatch. So again, the saga ain't over. Fast forward a year from today ago, that fuel pump finally died. So that Spectra fuel pump lasted me, what, 8 years and over 100,000 miles, which isn't bad, but could be better. Once again, pop the hatch open, pull it out, replace the fuel pump, and I'm back on the road. No time whatsoever. So there's a couple of reasons why somebody would adopt this, right? Those who have positive inclinations to go for this hatch realize how easy and effective it is to open it and make a repair and get on the way. A lot of you have pointed out that if you were on the side of the road and your fuel pump failed, you would be stranded because you need a lot of specialty or heavy tools to pull the bed or pull the tank, whereas now you can pop the hatch and you can replace a pump. So if you just, I don't know, for whatever reason you got a hold of a pump, you can literally make an emergency repair on the side of the road and get on the road. So a huge benefit there. So addressing that divide, right? Those of us who live around the Rust Belt or north of it realize that dropping the tank or unbolting the bed, moving back is a chore. You're bound to lose bolts, you're bound to lose hardware because it is rusted. And if I recall, because I've Googled for these, the bed bolts are near impossible to find. You're normally having to retrofit like carriage bolts or get from another truck. So that's not a great scenario to find yourself in either. So now let's get to your comments. So Lord Kenji asked me what my opinions are on battery brands and that he was potentially looking at an Optima yellow top. I've been down this rabbit hole. I think a lot of us may have been already, but if you do enough Googling, you realize it's like 1 or 2, maybe even 3 major conglomerates that own like all of the battery companies. And I know that doesn't mean they all start using the same materials across the board, but most people do link that kind of acquisition usually then leads to inferior materials and quality. And so I know some people have noted that the Optima series of batteries, the quality is dipped, or at least it's hit or miss. In my opinion, the battery you should buy is the one with the best warranty. Because let's face it, whether you get a year or 10 years out of it, when it fails prematurely, you want to know you can take it back to the store and get another one. And whether it's a $100 battery or a $300 battery, you want to be able to do that. So let's talk about a pretty rare part. And since we talked about the fuel pump access hatch, the piece of metal that's corrugated that I've used to make my hatch, you can buy that, okay? I did not make that. You can go to Jeff's Bronco Graveyard. It is a bed patch panel. Even if you go to Google and you put in 1993 Ford F150 bed patch panel, you will find one from whatever supplier. So that's it, guys. Really hope you like this format of video. More to come because there's these subjects like this I'd like to discuss in depth with you. And a lot of you guys have really good comments worth addressing. And then of course, there's always some tool or part that you guys are wanting to know the origin or where I bought it from. So let me know in the comments what you want to hear from me on the next video. And I'll see you then.